Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand today wearing the deep distress and sorrow of my electorate. This past week has been an absolutely gut-wrenching time for everyone in my community. It is a time when words feel totally inadequate, when all you want to do is take all the pain away that people are feeling. This is an absolute tragic event that has happened, and I want to extend my deepest heartfelt sympathies to the family of Linford Feek and all of their wonderful staff at the Friendly Grocers. These lives have changed forever in one terrible moment. Children and grandchildren now left without a beautiful father and grandfather. And I recognise the trauma and also want to thank the first responders, including many bystanders who rendered assistance, and recognise the trauma that they also are now dealing with. And I also recognise Samara Laverty in the chamber today and recognise how painful this must be for you. Madam Speaker, I would like to note the Feek family have made it clear that they don't want this tragedy, their tragedy, to be politicised or used. So I hope we can all keep that in mind today and moving forward. So today I do not speak on behalf of the Feek family, rather I speak to the sentiments of the broader Nightcliff community. Lynn and Margaret's Grocery, the Friendly Grocer or the 5-star, depending on which way you want to go, is a really well-loved central part of Nightcliff. Many locals have been shopping there for decades. It's really much more than just a corner store. The staff all make you feel like a part of their team and part of the family. Now, I know many people have been saying that over this past week, but it's true. I know many people, one of my own experiences, I got a message as far away from Guatemala this week from someone who was distressed, saying they loved the Friendly Grocer in Nightcliff. So well and truly, it was a really well-loved business and a well-loved family. One of my own experiences, it has always stuck in my mind, and I think of this often. It was a small, short conversation that happened years ago. It was during COVID, in the very early weeks when everyone was really fearful. I remember no one knew what the disease was exactly. It was particularly stressful for those working in the general public and in retail particularly. So at that time, I was heavily pregnant with my second child and I was terrified of being out in public. I was shopping at the 5-star, and as one of the staff was stacking shelves, I walked past and we said a brief nod and hello, and then he stopped and he turned to me and he said, "Oh, wow, this must be a really stressful time to be pregnant. How are you doing? Are you okay?" And he must have been, I think of this moment often, and of course it has come back to me now this week. He must have been under incredible stress, but he stopped. He took a moment to check on me, a complete stranger, and it was such a simple act of kindness, such a simple but empathetic act of reaching out to someone that he didn't know, and an act of human connection in that time, and it has left an impact on me. And I know I'm not the only one that holds deeply loved and grateful memories of that family and the grocer. Over this past Christmas, when another smaller store and cafe in my electorate, Porkin, unfortunately closed suddenly in the community, Lynn and Margaret reached out to the staff who had suddenly lost their jobs right before Christmas to offer them jobs and employment in their store. From what I understand, they didn't need more staff, but they felt it was the right thing to do. It was such an incredible kind action that speaks to the community spirit and care that the Feek family have. Running a small business is not for the faint-hearted, and they worked so hard to provide for the Nightcliff community, and they still are. They're now open again. But Nightcliff is hurting. There is a sense of shock around the senselessness of the crime, but also a feeling of despair because we've all seen dysfunction in our society that has been left unaddressed for too long, because we've seen the police and frontline services completely overwhelmed with an unmanageable workload. This is not the territory that we want to see. There are certain parts of my electorate that are hit hard and are really struggling with experiencing antisocial and criminal behaviour on a regular basis. I know because I've lived in 4 different locations in the electorate over the past 7 years, and some are definitely less safe than others. I know what it's like to hear noises in the night and feel terrified that someone is trying to break in. Just like many people here in the NT, I've also been a victim of crime. I'm incredibly worried that these experiences with crime, antisocial behaviour, and just general feelings of being unsafe are making it more difficult for our communities to unite and work together to overcome the hurdles that we face. Ever since my election, crime and community safety has been a core issue continually raised with me, and it's something myself and my staff work on every single day in the office, and I know many others here would too. I know that the community is feeling unsafe and desperately want to see the Nightcliff area and Darwin more broadly become a place that is safe, where all people can thrive. I have previously written to the Police Minister on behalf of my constituents to request that the police station hours, the Nightcliff Police Station, be extended, that the capabilities of the station be increased, as well as increased foot patrols through the Nightcliff shopping precinct area. I still have not received a response from the Police Minister. So I repeat that call from my community today. We know it was a broken promise by Labor, but the CLP is now in power. Listen to the voices of my community and open the station properly. And look, I understand the limitations of police, but surely there are also other ways that we can utilise that station space to help community safety, particularly vulnerable people that we have, and use it for preventative measures. People are coming all week to throw out ideas to me. They say, put a young parents training and support group in there. Put in a return to country office like the one they have in Casuarina. Put in a youth engagement program there. I urge the CLP, show some vision and use that space to help my community. Over the past 7 months in my role, I have organised and facilitated numerous meetings between housing providers and tenants themselves around ongoing safety issues in public housing. I am also in ongoing contact with the security firm that's at Litchfield Court, and I do numerous site visits and often go and speak to tenants there and hear directly from them. We also have ongoing one-on-one support to many of the tenants in our public housing and also the residents in the surrounding areas. I've been communicating feedback from the community to other organisations such as St Vincent's de Paul and Osnam House, and have been out there to visit them with their program and those running that service. In the Nightcliff shopping area where my office is, liaising with different businesses and staff around antisocial and criminal behaviour and then relaying their concerns to the appropriate authorities is something that myself and my staff do constantly. And just like many others, I've walked across the road to the police station to ask for assistance when there is an incident occurring, and have been told no one in the building can come and to call the non-emergency line. So I understand the severe resourcing issues the police are facing, but I also understand now that having a police station there, but the public are constantly being told there's no police to help them, is an immense frustration to many of the constituents. So in taking action, recently, or over a month ago, I held an open meeting with local businesses to get together to discuss what else we could do and what was within our powers to come up with a bit of a plan. The local business owners decided they wanted to request the government to fund private security in the Nightcliff shopping precinct, such as what we see in the city and Bundilla Beach. As our shopping village is not under a single landlord and instead a series of separately owned and tenanted shops, the plan was to get everyone to join the Nightcliff Traders Association to strengthen their voice and speak as one. Then they wanted to create a petition, which I would then table in Parliament. So that was the plan we were working on in the Nightcliff shopping area before this incident occurred. But it wasn't only that. The local businesses and their employees were feeling like no one in the government was listening to them, so I was trying to get representatives from the local police to meet with the businesses to hear their concerns directly. In fact, the most recent email I'd written was tragically on the morning, mere hours before the attack happened. And I want to read that email out because it almost foreshadows what was to come. I said, "Hello, I'm writing on behalf of some of the shop owners here in Nightcliff Shopping Village, who I have been meeting with regarding antisocial and criminal behaviour in and around the shops. They are regularly experiencing theft, damage, harassment and littering on their premises and say that it is having a severe impact on their businesses and customers. They were hoping to organise a meeting with yourself and a representative from the police station to relay their experiences and discuss some possible actions to combat the behaviours that we are experiencing. Whilst I understand the larger issues at play, such as social drivers of crime and the limitations on police resourcing, I am hoping that the local businesses here can work together with police to help mitigate some of the impacts from the crime and antisocial behaviour we are experiencing." End quote. I've been working every single day since the attack, and from these conversations, I know that much of the community wants immediate action to make them feel safer. It is my duty as their elected representative to listen to them, so I will be supporting these amendments. I think it is reasonable and indeed necessary that the judiciary take into the consideration the safety of the community when considering bail. However, I hold deep reservations on the changes to the Youth Justice Act. I want to note that I was briefed on these changes yesterday evening and have only just seen the full amendments this morning. I therefore haven't had the opportunity to engage in proper consultation with experts, frontline workers or my electorate in regard to these specific changes. I was initially unaware that there would be changes to the Youth Justice Act, and now I'm deeply concerned about the consequential change in removing the detention as last resort provision. Detention as last resort does not mean no one is ever detained. I understand that there are children and young people who have been so damaged in their short lives that they are themselves now a danger to those around them. Detention as a last resort doesn't mean we let those kids go. For their own well-being and the communities, they need to be detained and rehabilitated. I don't think we need to be removing that principle, but I'm concerned because there is endless evidence that the more children are locked up under punitive measures without rehabilitation, that just increases the likelihood they will reoffend. This makes our communities less safe, not more. We all know, and those opposite have even said, that jailing is failing. This is going to significantly increase the amount of inmates who are on remand. Figures from last quarter show that 44% of the prison population of people are on remand. I've heard it might now be as high as 55%. These figures are going to rise significantly with these changes. Where are we going to keep these people? Alongside other members of the crossbench, I visited Holt's Men's Prison and saw firsthand that the prison is already beyond its capacity. There were mattresses from wall to wall in rooms where people were not even supposed to be sleeping. We've already had significant reductions in the access to bail, yet we're seeing high crime rates. Does that not show us, Madam Speaker, that this approach is not working? I heard the Chief Minister on radio this morning talking about programs in prison. She mentioned a number, I think it was 40, for completion of a domestic violence program for offenders. That is a minuscule number compared to the number of offenders who are actually in there for domestic violence offences. And because of the other elements to this are, what is the wait times to get on these programs? What is the eligibility and what is the completion rate? Madam Speaker, I have had numerous staff from the sector talk to me anonymously about this crisis. They say there are barely any programs. Barely any prisoners have access to them. And I trust the word of these frontline workers far more than the mealy-mouthed lines coming from our Corrections Minister. This situation is unacceptable. And probably one of the biggest issues is remand times. Now, when people are on remand, this is a crucial thing that a lot of people in the public don't understand. When people are on remand, they have no access to programs that target problem behaviour. This is because this is often seen by the court and as an admission of guilt. But there are so many other beneficial things we should be doing to people on remand. Drug and alcohol rehab for a start. Why is this not happening? And so the big problem that these staff are raising with me is that because many inmates are serving their entire sentence on remand, they then have zero access to any programs or supports to set them up well. So when they eventually get to their court date, which has been delayed because the government has not put in supports to the system to cope with the extra prisoners, they've already served their time and often served more time than they were actually convicted of. And then they are released without having had any rehabilitation. None at all. And they come out even angrier and more dangerous than they were to begin with. I honestly don't understand how people opposite can stand there with a straight face and talk about community safety when the people in prison who spend their whole sentence on remand are not getting any rehabilitation. It's not good enough. And even those who are sentenced have little support programs and opportunities to change their life. Instead, we're just institutionalising them. The NT has the highest rates of recidivism in Australia, with 6 out of 10 prisoners returning to jail within 2 years of being released. It is no surprise that the rates are so high when adult inmates are spending 23 hours in their cell and a mere 1 hour outside. As one corrections worker I know mused, of course people come out of prison angry. Being locked up without work or anything engaging for 23 hours a day is going to make you angry. We are failing both the people who are incarcerated and the broader community as we aren't creating any pathways for rehabilitation. If we want to truly make the NT safe, let's actually prevent crime. There have been found to be 8 social determinants that increase someone's likelihood of incarceration. These are having been in and out of foster care or home care, receiving a poor school education, being Indigenous, having early contact with the police, having an unsupported mental health or cognitive disability, problematic alcohol or other drug use, experiencing homelessness or unstable housing, and coming from or living in a disadvantaged location. By making investments in all of these 8 areas, we will actually be able to reduce crime. It is a proven method of preventing crime rather than punishing those who already committed crime. We have now, finally, in 2025, heard the CLP utter the phrase addressing the root causes of crime, decades after frontline services, police and other experts have been calling for this. But they can say these words, but it means nothing without action. We're yet to see any action on the root causes. Domestic violence organisations who have contradicted the lines that we've heard from our DV Minister and Attorney General on their supposed consultations, these people who are dedicating their lives to protecting women and children are saying, we are not being consulted. We have no assurances about our funding. They are turning away women and children from shelters every day. This is not good enough. I want to see us support young parents so that children are set up for a bright future with a good education a part of this. This is one of the areas we should focus on. Research in youth justice in the NT last year found that 94% of incarcerated children had reported notifications of exposure to family violence, and 77% had mental health needs or a cognitive disability. It is a huge percentage. Almost half of the study group had multiple diagnoses of cognitive disabilities, including ADHD and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. We are failing these young people through our failure to strengthen families and social supports and our health systems. Should we not be seeking to rehabilitate and support young people rather than institutionalise them? As stated by the Law Council of Australia and the Law Society of the Northern Territory last year, when the bail laws were first brought in, quote, there is overwhelming evidence that locking children up does not make our community safer and seriously harms the children concerned. In passing these bills, the new government spoke of jail time as being an opportunity for rehabilitation. But these laws appear to only focus on punishment, not addressing the disadvantage a child might face and helping them turn their lives around. Madam Speaker, in the last territorial election, between myself, the other Progressive Independent and the Labor incumbent, we received 75% of first preferences. That means that overwhelmingly, my electorate does not want the CLP's anti-evidence punitive measures on crime. They talk about a mandate, but they do not have a mandate in my electorate. People in my electorate want evidence-based measures that will work. We just want something that will work. I recognise that we need both short and long-term solutions. And look, short-term solutions need to include greater capacity of the prisons, for sure, so there are room for inmates and so that the vital programs in prisons can actually be run. And I stress this, there is not enough funding and resources in our prisons to rehabilitate our prisoners. This is a massive failure. I know that we want to be able to deliver immediate results for our communities, but if it was simple, we wouldn't be seeing the high rates of crime in the NT. We need to begin these longer-term investments right now. More policing is not the only solution. Unfortunately, we know that the greater police presence doesn't necessarily translate to a reduction in offences. The NT Police Assistant Commissioner, Travis Wurst, on Katie Wolf this week, stated, quote, the way in which this incident transpired is such that police could have been standing out the front of that shop and it may not have prevented this unnecessary death from occurring, end quote. We need to stop forcing our police to pick up the pieces from failed government policies on crime prevention. It's not fair on them and it's not fair on the community. I think it is also important for me to call out some of the truly disappointing and harmful language and responses we have seen in response to this tragedy. I'm sure many people in this chamber have seen comments or have had conversations with people in their electorate who have been painting all First Nations people with the same brush and calling for more heinous violence. Violence begets violence. And as parliamentarians, we have a duty and responsibility to say we will not accept those calls in our communities. Myself and many others in my community have been deeply distressed by the racism and divide we are seeing. And sadly, instead of showing leadership and cracking down on these unacceptable calls for violence, the CLP government is not only silent on this, but some seem to be playing into this divisiveness. In the Chief Minister's speech this morning, she stated, we inherited a system that places too much emphasis on the historical trauma of perpetrators rather than focus on ongoing harm to the community. The sad reality is that we never actually dealt with the deep historical trauma that Aboriginal communities have. We just haven't. And that's the truth of the matter. There has not been a deep reckoning or structural investments in supporting the severe ongoing trauma of colonisation and dispossession. Generations of Aboriginal people have been brutalised by our systems, and no one in this government seems to want to educate themselves or to understand what this has done to vulnerable people in our community and why this is happening. And by continuing to have a punitive justice system that provides no means of rehabilitation, true rehabilitation, we are condemning a generation of young people to incarceration. It doesn't make us any safer, and Madam Speaker, it makes me so deeply depressed for the future of this place. I want to close with a quote from Larrakia Nation's CEO, Michael Rodimer. He stated, "We will not allow the actions of a few to define the many. The overwhelming majority of Aboriginal people live with pride, purpose and cultural responsibility. It is time for all levels of government to partner with us to build a future based on prevention." Thank you.